Hi, and welcome to At Home Art Lessons with the Art Groupies, where we develop great art habits. We're going to be working with this groupie, Observant Owen. Observant Owen is the type of groupie that notices everything. He's like that little ant that walks across a piece of art. We're going to be noticing everything about this artist, Emily Carr. She was born in the 1800s in Canada, and she was inspired by lots of the French Impressionists and loves to create movement and emotion with line and color in her forests. She would camp out in some of the Canadian forests by herself, which is unheard of by a woman in the 1800s, and she just sat there and observed the beautiful trees. This is a red oak, one of her famous paintings, and her swirls of colors that she used for the vegetation just makes that creation of movement in her artwork. So we're going to be inspired by Emily Carr and her famous forests. We're going to be learning about atmospheric perspective. Wow, that's a big word. Pretty much it just means here, near, and far. So I'm going to be teaching you atmospheric perspective. We're going to be starting out with line. Now, atmospheric perspective is all about things in the foreground or things that are here. So my big red oak is what is here. This is what is the most important part of my picture. It's close to the foreground or close to the bottom of the picture. And right now I'm just making the trunk of my big red oak, and I'm using a black oil pastel. Now I'm going to create that beautiful movement with a nice wavy line for the leaves of the red oak. She doesn't really make it realistic. She has fun with the colors. You still can tell it's a tree, but it's more like of an abstract tree, not a realistic tree. So atmospheric perspective, my red oak is what you see first. Now I'm going to draw what is near. So this is here, foreground. Near is the midground. So in the midground, you can see some trees. And then far are the trees that you can see all the way in the background. So I'll give some texture to this tree with these simple lines, make it seem like there's bark with my black pastel. So here's my here, my near, and now far would be those trees that are all the way in the background. And they're smaller, skinnier, and when we paint them, you're not going to see as much color on them like you would with the here or near trees. Now I'm going to add some of the foliage in the foreground or in the here, just making beautiful wavy lines. And then I'm also going to do the near. And then the far. So there you have it. There is my forest inspired by Emily Carr. I'm now going to use regular tempera paint or acrylic paints, whichever you have. I'm going to start in the here or the foreground, and I'm going to start with my red oak. I'm going to be using Tints and Shades for my painting. Now, we're going to create tints and shades by double loading my paintbrush, which means for a shade, I'm going to dip my paintbrush in a brown and a black to get a dark shade. And when I want a tint, I'm going to put my brush in the brown and the white, and that will create a lighter tint of brown. We're going to try to create movement with the color, just like we did with the line, by following that curve and not a straight line. So I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to dip it in the black and the brown, and I'm going to start painting my red oak. So things that are here close up, you want to make it bold and exciting because it's here, it's close up, you can see it. And the near, which is in the midground, is not going to be as bold. So we're mostly adding some blacks for that shade for our tree. I'm going to blend in some colors to make that texture for my red oak come alive. You can still see the black pastel coming through, but it's not sticking out like it would with watercolor. Watercolor, it would be tough to cover it up because the water and the oils don't like one another. But with tempera paint, you still get an idea that it's there and it's still a part of your art, but it's not as a contrast as it would be if it was a watercolor. So I'm going to do the top part of my tree, looking through those pieces of foliage. Some of that red up here. Alright, so my red oak bark is done. Now I'm going to add the greenery for my tree. Now I'm going to use a little bit of that green and a little bit of that black to create that shade. Can also blend in the colors that make green, which would be some blues. Emily Carr loved color. She really observed those trees to make them look very realistic and wanted to show that movement, just like Vincent van Gogh would in his beautiful landscapes. The foliage here for the tree leaves for my red oak kind of remind me of the spirals that you would see in Vincent van Gogh's Starry, Starry Night in his wind and in the stars shining. So making those nice big beautiful bold colors, and it's okay if you overlap or go on top of that tree. Makes for more realistic type art. I'm going to do all the way at the very top. Remember, we're not using straight lines here, we're using those nice beautiful wavy lines to make it appear like it's moving, and these colors that she uses really helps create that sense of emotion that she brings to her art. Alright, so there is my tree leaves. Now I'm going to start down here with that green still. I'm going to add some tint, some white to that to really brighten up that bottom part. Make it nice and bold so you can see it. and still sticking with that moving line. You don't want to do a straight line. She loved those moving lines to make it look and feel like the ground was moving, just like the tree leaves. Some more of that yellow. I think I got way too much black in there. So as I go further back, I'm even going to use more of the white, because now that I'm getting far, it's not as bold and as dark as what you would see in the here or the near. So as I go back, I'm getting lighter with my colors. So I'm adding that white to my paintbrush with the color to get that tint. Now I'm moving even further back, so I'm going to even add more white and even some more yellow to make that appear even further back. So atmospheric perspective. The here, the near, and the far. Or as artists would put it, foreground, background, and midground. So now I'm going to work on my trees that are near. I'm not going to use as much black for my shade as I did for the tree that is in the foreground, because now I'm just in the midground. So I don't want it to be as bold. So Emily Carr, don't know where she's been all my life, but you would think I would know more about her since her favorite artist was Van Gogh, and that was my favorite artist. One of my favorite artists, that is. So now I'm doing the far, and I'm adding these trees back here. Her landscapes and her forests seem just to be very magical, not realistic. So you can have fun with this and just create your own forest. And again, we're double loading. So I'm going to work on these trees here. This is near. So again, I'm using the brown and adding some white for a tint. And now I'm going to use the orange instead of the brown to make the far along with the white. And I'm not cleaning my paintbrush because the colors that are still on there are just creating these beautiful different types of colors that I wouldn't normally get if I just dipped my paintbrush into a color and just use that one color. When you leave some color on there, it just creates these beautiful pigments that you just would never get. So I kind of am breaking all my rules, because I always thought you should keep your colors nice and clean, but with this double loading, I'm a fan, because these colors that are being created are just magnificent and unlike anything I've ever seen. So, atmospheric perspective, here, near, and far. And voila, there is my Emily Carr red oak forest. I hope you had fun and enjoyed creating movement and emotion. Thanks. See you later.